I'm going to start with a simple question. What difference does it make to the people of Vancouver whether you're elected mayor or Suzanne Anton is elected mayor?
I think it makes a huge difference based on these last 3 years. We've had a very steady, focused government at City Hall, the Vision Council working with COPE. Our colleagues there really drilled down on the goals that we set 3 years ago. We ran on a campaign platform with key points focusing on homelessness, on transit, on making a difference on the economic future of our city, safety, a robust agenda that we have delivered on, which is quite unusual in politics. Usually it's, you don't know what you're going to get, and a lot of contradictory actions by governments that are elected after they're elected. We have followed through on our promises, and some people don't agree with those priorities perhaps. Some people don't agree with the pace of change, but I think we're going to continue on this path of following through on our commitments, of being focused on the priorities that we believe that Vancouver people want to have happen in the city.
Well, some people might look at issues like both parties favor a tax shift, both parties don't appear keen to change the electoral system, both parties actually wanted downtown celebrations during the Stanley Cup playoff run, and I hear it from people. They say, well, what difference does it make? How will it look different over the next 3 years if Gregor Robertson's mayor as opposed to Suzanne Anton being mayor?
Well, again, I think it'll be very different. We have a track record now of being focused on homelessness and affordable housing. We'll continue with that. We've now got a 10-year plan to address that, and with a critical focus on street homelessness and making sure we eliminate that by 2015. We're down 82% from where we were 3 years ago, so a big shift off the street into shelters and housing. The NPA was totally out to lunch on not dealing with homelessness for the years that they were in power, and we've been turning that around. We have a very strong green agenda, and the NPA, Suzanne Anton voted against it, voted against the homelessness and affordable housing plan. It's a lot of negativity that shows they will not focus on greening the city or affordable housing, that they will go back to their unpredictable and chaotic ways, I think, which is really unfortunate, because I think we're making good progress on some key issues right now. It's not easy. Affordability is really tough in Vancouver, and that's one that we still have more work to do, especially in low and middle income housing and getting more options for young people and seniors. That's going to be a real test for the coming years.
If there was one thing you could have done differently over the past 3 years, what would it have been?
Could have done differently, boy. I'm happy with a lot of the work that we've done over these past 3 years. If there's one big surprise that I've had, it's that we've been able to do a lot of what we said we would do. You always hear that you can't get anything done in government, but Vision and COPE have worked together to get a lot done. I think the rate of change is challenging at times, and certainly for neighborhoods that are dealing with a lot of applications for new developments happening. That can be difficult, and over the couple of years that we've had, we had a mix with some projects that were accepted and are being built in neighborhoods, and others that were had a lot of blowback from neighborhoods. Some that we stopped in their tracks till we could get a better thing on the table. But we want to try and get neighborhood voice and engagement involved in the growth and development of the city more significantly. We've got 4 neighborhood plans now in process: the Downtown East Side, West End, Grandview Woodlands, and Marpole, that were ignored for decades, basically. And we need to have plans in place in all the neighborhoods around the city. So we've really cranked up the efforts on that front, but that's a difficult piece, because not everyone believes that growth and development need to happen. And certainly there's a lot of different opinions about how it happens and where specifically and how big.
The NPA says that you and your colleagues are free spenders, and there's been a 15% increase in the City Hall operating budget in the 3 years since you were elected. That's 5% per year. What would you say to NPA candidates who are out on the hustings saying that you're not good money managers?
I would absolutely disagree. We've had a very tough 3 years in terms of budgeting, the recession being a big part of that. The increases are driven by the labor agreements that we have with the city unions that were negotiated by the NPA and precipitated a 3-month garbage strike in the process. which was totally unnecessary, and no other city around the region had that strike. We got the same deal that everyone else got with a strike thrown in the mix. We have really had to sharpen our pencils at City Hall to get a budget that worked, to keep taxes in check, to keep actually our property tax increases significantly lower than what the NPA did in their last 3 years. But we focused on efficiency, really. We focused on making sure that city departments could combine their functions to be more efficient and streamline their operations. We've managed to do all that working in partnership with the labor unions, not laying off people, but getting people into new positions, repurposing them, and basically having a respectful relationship with our unions and bringing the city budget really in check. And now with good, clear reporting every quarter, which wasn't done before, I think we've taken a very different, more business-like approach, but also respecting our unions and the taxpayer ultimately.
NPA has promised to turn over an entire city block across from the Sandman Hotel for a major new art gallery. What's stopping you from making a similar election promise?
So we have the art gallery wanting that city block there, the old Larwell Park or bus depot site, and there's a public process that's now underway because we want to understand what everyone thinks in Vancouver about the art gallery being there, supporting that cause. We've basically set aside 2 of the 3 acres for the art gallery to fundraise and do their business plan for. And we want to know what people think, what the arts community think, is this the right step for the city with the proposal coming forward. We don't want to just carte blanche say, go for it. That is an NPA attitude that has got us in trouble on other projects like the Olympic Village. And
Would you say with the streetcar too? Because they're
I'd say
promising
the
a
streetcar is the same thing. There's no money from TransLink, the province, the federal government. I love streetcars. I think we all love streetcars, but when we don't have a business plan to do it, and we have priorities like more buses, making sure people aren't getting passed up on our streets, making sure we focus on the Broadway line and getting rapid transit out to UBC, that's the top priority. Streetcars, again, it would be, Suzanne says it'll be a P3, it'll pay for itself, don't worry about it. But we've been down that road before, and it's cost us a pretty penny, and we can't be irresponsible with taxpayer dollars like that.
One of the criticisms I hear around town is that this council puts the interests of the development industry ahead of the interests of people living in neighborhoods. And what's your response? You must have heard that on numerous occasions.
Yeah, certainly, people express their concerns about new developments, and we've worked really hard to make sure people have a voice. The public hearing process obviously does that. We've enhanced the consultation process to make sure that developers are actually doing work in the neighborhood prior to those applications being brought before council. So we want to be sure that there's been lots of work done on the ground in the communities that are going to be affected by change. That's working upstream, and I think that's the way we have to go in future. We got to have a more functional relationship between the developer, the neighborhood, and City Hall, and how we approve these kind of projects. And we've worked at that. It's not perfect, and the way the city system works, I think, needs some change that we're hopeful to see in these years ahead. But we also need to grow as a city. I think we have a lot of newcomers to our city. We need more affordable housing, and we only get that with more projects coming forward.
Earlier this year, I attended a news conference at City Hall held by the Director of Planning and a major developer, Bruno Wall. So this was the case of the regulator, the planning director, holding a joint news conference information session with their proponent. And the citizens who were living in that neighborhood were quite upset, and they were saying, it's not fair. Why couldn't the neighborhood have been present? And what would you say to people who look at a situation like this, where the Director of Planning holds a joint news conference using city resources with 4 other city staff present with a developer to basically articulate the views of the developer?
Well, the conferences that have been held jointly with
I'd never
developers,
experienced anything like that before in 15 years of covering Vancouver City Hall.
I think when there are particularly large projects where there's sensitivity, City Hall has had public news conferences to basically explain the process and explain how the planning department is working on this and the consultation and all the different steps. So it's not intended absolutely not an endorsement of the project. It has to go through council process, through the public hearing, and those are more information meetings that have been held to make sure people understand the city's process with these kind of proposals.
And then recently, the council approved the Telus Garden project downtown. Big project, 45-story tower, $10 million community amenity contribution, which was increased from the $8 million originally. But none of that $10 million went to housing or childcare. It's a 45-story tower, nothing for affordable housing. How do you justify a decision like this?
Well, those decisions are particularly challenging. In the case of the Telus Garden, the money was allocated for a park in the downtown. And as we add so many more units of housing in the downtown, Emery Barnes Park is being created out of the same sort of fund. This is a park that is on Richards, at Smythe and Richards, that basically is
Couldn't they
creating
go
some
to
more
Stanley
space.
Park?
Well, you know, I asked questions about that actually in the public hearing, and the rationale for creating quite expensive park space in the middle of downtown versus other uses for those monies. But there's been a long process of identifying where the parks and green space need to be downtown when we're adding more towers and residential and business space. I think that project it's great to see Telus investing in the core of Vancouver and with a state-of-the-art building. And those are always tough choices about where that bonus check that comes from new developments gets invested. Is it park? Is it housing? Is it community facilities? Those are the decisions that are tough for the planning department and city council.